Rabbit at Rest by John Updike. This book consists of 3 chapters and is 512 pages long. Preliminary quotations. Rabbit basks above that old remembered world, rich at rest. From Rabbit is Rich. Food to the indolent is poison, not sustenance. Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. Chapter 1. F.L. Standing amid the tan, excited post-Christmas crowd at the Southwest Florida Regional Airport, Rabbit Angstrom has a funny, sudden feeling that what he has come to meet, what's floating in unseen about to land, is not his son Nelson and daughter-in-law Prue and their 2 children, but something more ominous and intimately his own death, shaped vaguely like an airplane. The sensation chills him above and beyond the terminal air conditioning. But then, facing Nelson has made him feel uneasy for 30 years. The airport is relatively new. You drive to it off exit 21 of Interstate 75 down 3 miles of divided highway that, for all the skinny palms in rows and groomed 2 green Bermuda grass at its sides, seems to lead nowhere. There are no billboards or self-advertising roadside enterprises or those low houses with cooling white tile roofs that are built by the acre down here. You think you've made a mistake. An anxious red Camaro convertible is pushing in the rearview mirror. Harry, there's no need to speed. We're early, if anything. Janice, Rabbit's wife, said this to him on the way in. What rankled was the tolerant, careful tone she has lately adopted, as if he's prematurely senile. He looked over and watched her tuck back a stubborn, fluttering wisp of half-gray hair from her sun-toughened little brown nut of a face. "Honey, I'm being tailgated," he explained, and eased back into the right lane and let the speedometer needle quiver back below 65. The Camaro convertible passed in a rush, a cocoa-brown black chick in a gray felt stewardess's cap at the wheel, her chin and lips pushing forward, not giving him so much as a sideways glance. This rankled, too. From the back, the way they've designed the trunk and bumper, a Camaro seems to have a mouth, 2 fat metal lips parted as if to hiss. So maybe Harry's being spooked began then. The terminal, when it shows up at last, is a long, low, white building like a bigger version of the Sunstruck clinics. Dental, chiropractic, arthritic, cardiac, legal medical, that line the boulevards of this state dedicated to the old. You park at a lot only a few steps away from the door of sliding brown glass. The whole state babies you. Inside, upstairs, where the planes are met, the spaces are long and low and lined in tasteful felt gray like that cocky stewardess's cap, and filled with the kind of music you become aware of only when the elevator stops or when the dentist stops drilling. Plucked strings, no vocals, music that's used to being ignored, a kind of carpet in the air to cover up a silence that might remind you of death. These long, low, tasteful spaces, as little cluttered by advertisements as the highway, remind Rabbit of something. Air conditioning ducts, he thinks at first, and then crypts. These are futuristic spaces like those square tunnels in movies that a trick of the camera accelerates into space warp to show they're going from one star to the next. 2001, will he be alive? He touches Janice at his side, the sweated white cotton of her tennis dress at the waist, to relieve his sudden sense of doom. Her waist is thicker, has less of a dip, as she grows into that barrel body of women in late middle age, their legs getting skinny, their arms getting loose like cooked chicken coming off the bone. She wears over the sweaty tennis dress an open-weave yellow cardigan hung unbuttoned over her shoulders against the chill of airport air conditioning. He is innocently proud that she looks, in her dress and tan, even to the rings of pallor that sunglasses have left around her eyes, like these other American grandmothers who can afford to be here in this land of constant sunshine and eternal youth. Gate A5, Janice says, as if his touch had been a technical question. From Cleveland by way of Newark, she says, with that businesswoman efficiency she has taken on in middle age, especially since her mother died 7 years ago, leaving her the lot, Springer Motors and its assets, one of only 2 Toyota agencies in the Brewer, Pennsylvania area. The family all still speak of it as the lot, since it began as a used car lot owned and run by Fred Springer, dead Fred Springer, who is reincarnated, his widow Bessie and daughter Janice have the fantasy, in Nelson, both being wiry shrimps with something shifty about them. Which is why Harry and Janice spend half the year in Florida, so Nelson can have free run of the lot. Harry, chief sales representative for over 10 years, with him, and Charlie Stavros managing it all between them, wasn't even mentioned in Ma Springer's will, for all the years he lived with her in her gloomy big house on Joseph Street, and listened to her guff about what a saint Fred was, and her complaining about her swollen ankles. Everything went to Janice, as if he was an unmentionable incident in the Springer dynasty. The house on Joseph Street, that Nelson and his family get to live in just for covering the upkeep and taxes, must be worth $300,000 now that the yuppies are moving across the mountain from northeast Brewer into the town of Mount Judge, not to mention the cottage in the Poconos, where even the shacks in the woods have skyrocketed, and the lot land alone, 4 acres along Route 111 south of the river, might bring close to $1 million from one of the high-tech companies that have come into the Brewer area this last decade to take advantage of the empty factories, the skilled but depressed laboring force, and the old-fashionedly cheap living. Janice is rich. Rabbit would like to share with her the sudden chill he had felt, the shadow of some celestial airplane, but a shell she has grown repels him. The dress at her waist felt thick and unresponsive, a damp hide. He is alone with his premonition. A crowd of welcomers has collected this Tuesday after Christmas in the last year of Reagan's reign. A little man with that hunched back and awkward swiftness Jews often seem to have dodges around them and shouts behind him to his wife, as if the Angstroms weren't there. "Come on, Grace." Grace, Harry thinks. A strange name for a Jewish woman. Or maybe not. Biblical names, Rachel, Esther, but not always. Barbara, Bet. He is still getting used to the Jews down here, learning from them, trying to assimilate the philosophy that gives them such a grip on the world. That hump-backed old guy in his pink checked shirt and lipstick-red slacks racing as if the plane coming in was the last train out of Warsaw. When Harry and Janice were planning the move down here, their advisors on Florida, mostly Charlie Stavros and Webb Merkett, told them the Gulf side was the Christian coast as opposed to the Jewish Atlantic side. But Harry hasn't noticed that, really. As far as his acquaintanceship goes, all Florida is as Jewish as New York and Hollywood and Tel Aviv. In their condo building, in fact, he and Janice are pets of a sort, being Gentiles. They're considered cute. Watching that little guy, 70 if he's a day, breaking into a run, hopping zigzag through the padded pedestal chairs so he won't be beaten out at the arrival gate, Harry remorsefully feels the bulk, 230 pounds the kindest scales say, that has enwrapped him at the age of 55 like a set of blankets the decades have brought one by one. His doctor down here keeps telling him to cut out the beer and munchies, and each night after brushing his teeth he vows to, but in the sunshine of the next day he's hungry again for anything salty and easy to chew. What did his old basketball coach, Marty Totherow, tell him toward the end of his life about how when you get old you eat and it's never the right food? Sometimes Rabbit's spirit feels as if it might faint from lugging all this body around. Little squeezy pains tease his ribs, reaching into his upper left arm. He has spells of feeling short of breath and mysteriously full in the chest, full of some pressing essence. When he was a kid and had growing pains, he would be worried, and the grown-ups around him laughed them off on his behalf. Now he is unmistakably a grown-up and must do his own laughing off. A colorful octagonal nook of a shop selling newspapers and magazines and candy and choral souvenirs and ridiculous pastel T-shirts saying what bliss southwestern Florida is interrupts the severe gray spaces of the airport. Janice halts and says, "Could you wait here a sec till I see if they have the new L? And maybe I should go back and use the ladies while I have the chance. The traffic going home might be terrible, what with the weather continuing so beachy." "Now you think of it," he says. "Well, do it if you're going to do it." The little Mamie Eisenhower bangs she still wears have grown skimpy with the years and curly with the humidity and salt water and make her look childish and stubborn and cute, actually. We still have 10 minutes at least. I don't know what that jerk was in such a hurry about. He was just in love with life, Harry tells her, and obediently waits. While she's in the ladies, he cannot resist going into the shop and buying something to nibble, a Planter's peanut brittle bar for 45 cents. Planter's original peanut bar, the wrapper says. It was broken in two somewhere in transit, and he thinks of saving one half to offer his 2 grandchildren when they're all together in the car heading home. It would make a small hit. But the first half is so good he eats the second, and even dumps the sweet crumbs out of the wrapper into his palm, and with his tongue licks them all up like an anteater. Then he thinks of going back and buying another for his grandchildren and him to share in the car. Look what Grandpa has, as they turn onto Interstate 75. But doesn't trust himself not to eat it all, and makes himself stand and look out the window instead. This airport has been designed with big windows viewing the runways, so if there's a crash, everybody can feast upon it with their own eyes. The Fireball, the fuselage doing a slow skidding twirl, shedding its wings. As he tries with his tongue to clean the sticky brittle stuff, the caramelized sugar and corn syrup, from between his teeth, all his still, thank God, and the front ones not even crowned, Rabbit stares out at the big square of sunny afternoon. The runway tapering to a triangle, the Florida flatness turning brown as thatch beyond the green reach of a watering system. Winter, the shadow of it that falls down here, hasn't hit yet. Every day the temperature has been in the 80s. After 4 winters in Florida, he knows how the wind off the Gulf can cut into you on the first tee if you have an early starting time, and the sweaters can be shed only as the sun climbs toward noon. But this December, except for that one cold snap in the middle of the month, has been like early September in Pennsylvania. Hot, and only the horse chestnuts turning, and only a certain weary dryness in the air, and the buzz of cicadas to suggest that summer is over. As the candy settles in his stomach, a sense of doom regrows its claws around his heart, little prongs like those that hold fast a diamond solitaire. There has been a lot of death in the newspapers lately. Max Robinson, the nation's first and only black national anchorman, and Roy Orbison, who always wore black and black sunglasses and sang Pretty Woman in that voice that could go as high as a woman's, and then before Christmas that Pan Am Flight 103 ripping open like a rotten melon 5 miles above Scotland, and dropping all these bodies and flaming wreckage all over the golf course and the streets of this little town like Glockamora. What was its real name? Lockerbie. Imagine sitting there in your seat being lulled by the hum of the big Rolls-Royce engines and the stewardesses bringing the clinking drinks caddy, and the feeling of having caught the plane and nothing to do now but relax, and then with a roar and giant ripping noise and scattered screams, this whole cozy world dropping away, and nothing under you but black space, and your chest squeezed by the terrible unbreathable cold. That cold you can scarcely believe is there, but that you sometimes actually feel still packed into the suitcases, stored in the unpressurized hold, when you unpack your clothes, the dirty underwear and beach towels with the merciless chill of death from outer space still in them. Just yesterday, some jet flying from Rochester to Atlanta tore open at 31,000 feet, a 14-inch hole, the newspaper said, and was lucky to land in West Virginia. Everything falling apart. Airplanes, bridges, 8 years under Reagan of nobody minding the store, making money out of nothing, running up debt, trusting in God. Harry has flown in his life to dealers' conferences here and there, and that time 9 years ago with 2 other couples to the Caribbean. But to Florida he and Janice always drive, so they have the car there. Nelson will probably bitch because there's only one, though it's a Camry station wagon that takes 6 comfortably. Nelson likes to do his own thing, going off on mysterious errands that take hours. Nelson, a real sore spot. Harry's tongue begins to sting, so he stops working at a jagged bit of corn syrup sweetness stuck behind an eye tooth. And also in the Fort Myers News Press this morning, an item about a pregnant woman over in Fort Lauderdale shot in an attempted robbery yesterday. Must have been black, but the paper didn't say so. They don't now. She died, but they saved the baby by cesarean section. And then there was also on the front page this interview with a guy convicted of picking up a 12-year-old girl and getting her to smoke dope and raping her, and then burning her alive somehow, and now complaining about the cockroaches and rats in the cell on death row and telling the reporter, "I've always tried to do the best I can, but I'm no angel, and I'm no killer either." His saying this made Harry laugh. It rang a kind of bell with him. No angel, yet no killer either. Not like this guy Bundy, who murdered dozens of women in dozens of states and has been stalling his execution for 10 years in Tallahassee down here. And Hirohito, too, is taking his time. Harry can remember when Hirohito was right up there with Hitler and Mussolini in the war propaganda. And he has never forgot how, 30 years ago, it will be this June, his baby daughter Rebecca June drowned, and when he went back to the apartment alone, there was still this tub full of tepid gray water that had killed her. God hadn't pulled the plug. It would have been so easy for him who set the stars in place to have it unhappen, or to delete from the universe whatever it was that exploded that Pan Am 747 over Scotland. Those bodies with hearts pumping, tumbling down in the dark. How much did they know as they fell through air dense like tepid water, tepid gray like this terminal where people blow through like dust in an air duct? To the airline, we're all just numbers on the computer, one more or less, who cares? A blip on the screen, then no blip on the screen. Those bodies tumbling down like wet melon seeds. A star has appeared in the daytime sky, in the blue beneath the streaks of stratocirrus, an airplane glinting, lowering, heading straight toward them. This glint, he thinks, holds his near and dear. Nelson, his son, his left-handed daughter-in-law called Prue, though she was christened Teresa, Judy, his 8-year-old granddaughter, and Roy, his 4-year-old grandson. Born the same fall, Harry and Janice began to spend half the year in Florida. The baby actually was named after both fathers, Harold Roy, but everybody calls him Roy. Something Harry could resent, since Roy Lubble is a sorehead laid-off Akron steamfitter who didn't even come to the wedding and never did shit for his 7 hungry kids. Prue still seems hungry, and in that she reminds Harry of himself. The star grows, has become a saucer shape, glinting in a number of points, a winged aluminum machine, aglide and enlarging above the sulky, flat scrubland and horizon thready with palms. He imagines the plane exploding as it touches down, ignited by one of its glints, in a ball of red flame, shadowed in black like you see on TV all the time, and he is shocked to find within himself, imagining this, not much emotion, just a cold thrill at being a witness, a kind of bleak wonder at the fury of chemicals, and relief that he hadn't been on the plane himself, but was instead safe on this side of the glass, with his faint, pronged sense of doom. Janice is at his side again. She is breathless, excited. "Harry, hurry," she says. "They're here 10 minutes early. There must have been a tailwind from Newark. I came out of the ladies and went down to the gate and couldn't find you. You weren't there. Where were you?" "Nowhere, just standing here by the window." That plane he had mentally exploded hadn't been their plane at all. Heart thumping, his breath annoyingly short, he strides after his little wife down the wide gray carpeting. Her pleated tennis skirt flicks at the brown backs of her thighs, and her multi-layered white Nikes look absurdly big at the end of her skinny legs, like Minnie Mouse in her roomy shoes. But Janice's get-up is no more absurd than many in this crowd of greeters. Men with bankers' trim white haircuts and bankers' long grave withholding faces, wearing day-glow yellow-green tank tops, stenciled Coral Point or Captiva Island, and tomato-red bicycle shorts, and Bermudas patterned like fried eggs, and their permed and thick-middled women in these ridiculous one-piece exercise outfits like long flannel underwear in pink or blue, baby colors on Cupid doll shapes, their costumes advertising the eternal youth they have found, like those skiers and tennis players and golfers now who appear on television laden with logos like walking billboards. The hunchbacked little Jewish guy in such a hurry has already met his loved one, a tall, grinning woman, a Rachel or Esther with frizzed-out hair and a big, pale profile, carrying over one arm her parka from Newark, her plump, dumpy mother on the other side of her, Grace was her name, while the old man, with angry, choppy gestures, is giving the women the latest version of his spiel, they listening with half an ear each to this newest little thing he feels very strongly about. Rabbit is curious to see that this grown daughter, a head taller than her parents, appears to have no mate. A tall black man, slick-looking in a 3-piece gray suit, but nothing of a dude, carrying himself with a business-like wasp indifference to his appearance, and lugging one of those floppy big bags that smart travelers use and that hog all the overhead rack space, is trailing unnaturally close behind. But he can't be a relation. He must be just trying to pass, like that black chick in the red Camaro coming in off 75. Everybody tailgating. That's the way we move along now. Harry and Janice reach gate A5. People get off of airplanes in clots, one self-important fusspot with 3 bags or some doddery old dame with a cane bunching those behind them. You wonder if we haven't gone overboard in catering to cripples. There they are, Janice pronounces at last, adding under her breath to Harry quickly, "Nelson looks exhausted." Not so much exhausted, Rabbit thinks, as shifty. His son is carrying his own son on his left arm, and Nelson's right eye squints, the lid seeming to quiver, as if a blow might come from that unprotected side. Roy must have fallen asleep on the flight, for his head leans against his father's neck, seeking a pillow there. His eyes open with that liquid, childish darkness, but his plump mouth mute, gleaming with saliva, in shock. Harry goes forward as soon as the ropes allow to lift the burden from his son, but Nelson seems reluctant to let go, as if the child's own grandfather is a kidnapper. Roy, too, clings. With a shrug of exasperation, Harry gives up and leans in close and kisses Roy's velvety cheek, finer than velvet, still feverish with sleep, and shakes his own son's small and clammy hand. In recent years, Nelson has grown a mustache, a tufty brown smudge not much wider than his nose. His delicate lips underneath it never seem to smile. Harry looks in vain into this fearful brown-eyed face for a trace of his blue-eyed own. Nelson has inherited Janice's tense neatness of feature, with her blur of evasion or confusion in the eyes. The puzzled look sits better on a woman than a man. Worse, Janice's high forehead and skimpy fine hair have become in Nelson a distinctly growing baldness. His receding temples have between them a transparent triangle of remaining hair soon to become an island, a patch, and at the back of his head, when he turns to kiss his mother, a swath of skin is expanding. He has chosen to wear a worn blue denim jacket down on the plane, over a crisp, dressy shirt, though, pink stripes with white collar and cuffs, so he seems half-cocked, like a married rock star or a weekend gangster. One earlobe bears a tiny gold earring. "Mwah," Janice says to cap her hello kiss. She has learned to make such noises down here among the overexpressive Jewish women. Harry carefully greets Judith and Prue. Going to be 9 in less than a month, the skinny girl is a sketch of a woman, less than life-size and not filled in. A redhead like her mother. Lovely complexion, cheeks rosy under the freckles, and the details of her face, lashes, eyebrows, ears, nostril wings, lips quick to lift up on her teeth, frighteningly perfect, as if too easy to smash. When he bends to kiss her, he sees in front of her ears the sheen of childhood's invisible down. She has Prue's clear green eyes and carrot-colored hair, but nothing as yet in her frail straight frame and longish calm face of the twist that life at some point gave Prue, making her beauty, even when she was 24, slightly awkward, limping, as it were, a look that has become more wry and cumbersome with the 9 years of marriage to Nelson. She likes Harry, and he likes her, though they have never found a way around all these others to express it. "What a pair of beauties," he says now, of the mother and daughter. Little Judy wrinkles her nose and says, "Grandpa's been eating candy again. For shame on him. I could smell it, something with peanuts in it, I can tell. He even has some little pieces stuck between his teeth. For shame." He had to laugh at this attack, at the accuracy of it, and the Pennsylvania Dutch way the little girl said "for shame." Local accents are dying out, but slowly. Children so precisely imitate their elders. Judy must have overheard in her house Nelson and Prue and maybe Janice talking about his weight problem and rotten diet. If they were talking, his health problems might be worse than he knows. He must look bad. "Shit," he says in some embarrassment. "I can't get away with anything anymore. Prue, how's the world treating you?" His daughter-in-law surprises him by, as he bends dutifully forward to kiss her cheek, kissing him flush on the mouth. Her lips have a wry, regretful, shy downward twist, but are warm and soft and big as cushions in the kiss's aftermath within him. Since he first met her in the shadows of Ma Springer's house that long-ago summer, a slender, slouching shape suddenly thrust into the midst of their lives, Nelson's pregnant Roman Catholic girlfriend from Ohio, a Kent State University secretary named Teresa Lubble, to become the mother of his 2 grandchildren, the carrier of his genes toward eternity. Prue has broadened without growing heavy in that suety Pennsylvania way. As if invisible pry bars have slightly spread her bones and new calcium been wedged in, and the flesh gently stretched to fit, she now presents more front. Her face, once narrow like Judy's, at moments looks like a flattened mask. Always tall, she has in the years of becoming a hardened wife and matron allowed her long straight hair to be cut and teased out into bushy wings a little like the hairdo of the Sphinx. Her hips and shoulders, too, have widened beneath the busy pattern, brown and white and black squares and diamond shapes arranged to look three-dimensional, of the checked suit she put on for the airplane, a lightweight suit wrinkled by the 3 hours of sitting and babysitting. A stuffed blue shoulder bag is slung across one shoulder, and her arms and hands clutch a camel-colored topcoat, 2 children's jackets, several slippery children's books based on morning television shows, a Cabbage Patch doll with its bunchy beige face, and an inflated plastic dinosaur. She has big hands with pink, cracked knuckles. Harry's mother had hands like that from washing clothes and dishes. How did Prue get them in this age of appliances? He stands gazing at her in a half-second's post-kiss daze. Having a wife and children soon palled for him, but he never fails to be excited by having in the flesh a daughter-in-law. She says, slangily, to mask the initial awkwardness when they meet, "You're looking good, Harry. The sunny South agrees with you." What did that frontal kiss mean? Its slight urgency. Some sad message there. She and Nelson never did quite fit. "Nobody else thinks so," he says, and grabs at her shoulder bag. "Let me help you carry some of this stuff. I'll take the bag." He begins to pull it off. Prue shifts the coat and toys to extend her arm to let him take it, but at the same time asks him, "Should you?" Harry asks, "Why does everybody treat me like some goddamn kind of invalid?" But he is asking the air. Prue and Janice are hugging with brisk, false enthusiasm, and Nelson is plodding ahead down the long gray corridor with Roy back to sleep on his shoulder. Harry is irritated to see that though Nelson has a careful haircut that looks only a few days old, the barber left one of those tails, like a rat's tail, uncut and hanging down over the boy's collar, under the spreading bald spot. How old does he think he is, 17? Little Judy trails her father, but Nelson is not waiting or looking back. The girl is just old enough to sense that in her nice, proper airplane outfit she should not sacrifice all dignity and run to catch up. She wears a navy blue winter coat over a pink summer dress. Its pink hem shows below the coat, and then her bare legs, which look long, longer than when he saw her last in early November. But it is the back of her head that kills him, her shiny carrot-colored hair braided into a pigtail caught into a showy, stiff white ribbon. Something of her mother's Catholic upbringing in that ribbon, decking out the Virgin or the baby Jesus or whoever to go on parade, to go on a ride in the sky. The sleek back of Judy's head, the pigtail bouncing as she tries not to run, so docilely, so unthinkingly wears the showy ribbon her mother put there that Harry smiles. Hurrying his stride, he catches up and reaches down and says, "Hey there, good-lookin'," and takes the hand she with a child's reflex lifts to be taken. Her hand is as surprisingly moist as her mother's lips were warm. Her head with its bone-white parting is higher than his waist. She complains to her mother, Harry has heard from Janice, about being the tallest girl in her section of the 4th grade. The mean boys tease her. "How's school going?" he asks. "I hate it," Judy tells him. "There are all these kids think they're big shots. The girls are the absolute worst." "Do you ever think you're a big shot?" She ponders this. "Some boys are always getting after me, but I tell them to fuck off." He clucks his tongue. "That's pretty rough language for the 4th grade." "Not really," she says. "Even the teacher says damn sometimes when we get her going." "How do you get her going?" Judy smiles upward, her mother's quick, wide-mouthed smile without the crimp. "Sometimes we all hum so she can't see our mouths move. A couple weeks ago, when she tried to make us all sing Christmas carols, one of these big-shot boys I told you about said it was against his parents' religion, and his father was a lawyer and would sue everybody. He sounds like a pain in the ass, Rabbit says. Grandpa, don't talk dirty. That's not dirty, that's just saying where it hurts. If you say somebody's a pain in the bottom, it sounds dirtier. Hey, here's the place I bought that peanut candy you smelled. Want some? You better ask Mom first. Harry turns and lets the two mothers, walking hip to hip and heads bowed in consultation, catch up. Prue, he says, will it rot any teeth if I buy Judy a candy bar? She looks up, distracted, but remembers to smile at him. I guess it won't kill her this once, though Nelson and I try to discourage junk in their diet. Whatever you get her, Harry, Janice adds, you ought to get Roy. But Roy's asleep and half her size. He'll know, though, Prue says, if you play favorites. He's just now coming out from under her shadow. Little Judy casting a shadow? Did he cast a shadow over Mim? Mim certainly got far enough away from Diamond County, if that was a statement. Got into the fast lane in Las Vegas and stayed. Don't be forever, Janice tells Harry, or else give me the keys so we can get into the car. They have 2 more bags they made them check in Newark. Nelson's probably down there already. Yeah, what's his idea rushing on ahead like that? Who's he sore at? Probably me, Prue says. I've given up trying to figure out why. Harry digs into one pocket of his plaid golf slacks, comes up with only a few T's and a plastic ball marker with 2 blue V's on it for Valhalla Village, and then into the other to find the knobbly notched bunch of keys on the ring. Saying, heads up, he tosses them toward Janice. Her hands jump together in a womanly panic, and the keys sail past them and hit her in the stomach. Just this little effort, the search and the toss, leaves him weary, as if the arm he lifted was soggy wash. The spontaneity and fun have been taken out of buying his granddaughter a treat. She chooses not a Planter's peanut bar, as he had envisioned, but a Sky bar, which he thinks might be truly bad for her teeth, those 5 different gooey fillings in the 5 humped segments of pure chocolate. He digs into the hip pocket of his pants, so old their plaid is sun-faded, and the hem of each pocket is darkened by the sweat off his hands over the years, and pulls out his wallet and hangs for a while over the candy rack, uncertain whether or not to get himself another sugary rectangle of stuck-together nuts, wondering if this time he would be lucky enough to get one not broken in the wrapper. Deciding against it because he eats too much junk, as Prue said, Prue and his doctor down here, old Dr. Morris, and then at the last possible split second, with the black woman at the counter within the octagonal shop already counting out his change from $1 for the Sky bar, deciding to buy the peanut brittle after all. It is not so much the swallowing and ingesting he loves as the gritty, edgy feeling of the first corner in his mouth, the first right-angled fragment slowly dissolving. To his surprise and indignation, not only does he now receive no change from the dollar, but owes the black woman, a severe matte, undiluted color you rarely see in the U.S., dull as slate, must be a Haitian or Dominican. Florida is full of boat people. A nickel more for the state tax. Airport prices, they nail you where there's no competition. Without competition, you get socialism and everybody freeloading and economies like they have in Cuba and Haiti. He pauses to glance at the magazines on the rack. The top row holds the skin mags, sealed in plastic, pieces of printed paper hiding details of the open-mouthed girls, open-mouthed as if perpetually astonished by their own tangible assets. Hustler, Gallery, Club, Penthouse, We, Live, Fox. He imagines himself buying one, braving the Haitian woman's disapproval. All these Caribbean types are evangelical fundamentalists, tin-roofed churches where they shout for the world to end now. And sneaking the magazine home, and while Janice is asleep or cooking or out with one of her groups, studying to satiety the spread shots and pink labia and boosted tits and buttocks tipped up from behind so the shaved cunt shows, with its sad little anatomy like some oyster. And sadly foreseeing that he will not be enough aroused, boredom will become his main feeling, and embarrassment at the expenditure. $4.25 they are asking these days, promising sexy sirens in the sauna, and Cara Lott gets hot, and oral sex a gourmet's guide. How disgusting we are when you think about it. Disposable meat. Come on, Grandpa, what's taking so long? They hurry after the others, who have vanished. Judy's shiny beribboned head makes him nervous, popping up first on one side of him and then the other. Like the car keys he was a little slow to find. Janice calls him Doddery when she can't even catch the clumsy mutt. If their granddaughter gets kidnapped from his side, she'll really call him Doddery. Easy does it, he tells Judy at the top of the escalator. Pick a step and stay on it. Don't get on a crack. And at the bottom, okay, step off, but not too soon. Don't panic. It'll happen. Okay. Good. I go on escalators all the time at the malls, she tells him, making up at him a little pinched, rebuking mouth with beads of melted chocolate at the corners. Where the hell is everybody, he asks her, for amid all the tan, loud presences that throng the lower, higher-ceilinged floor of the Southwest Florida Regional Airport, less duct-like and crypt-like, but still echoing with a muffled, steely doom that worries at his stomach, there is nobody he knows, strangers as total as if he has descended into hell. Are we lost, Grandpa? We can't be, he tells her. In their sudden small plight, he is newly aware of her preciousness, the jewel cut of her eyes and eyelashes, the downy glaze in front of her ears, and the gleam of each filament of her luxuriant hair, pulled taut into a thick pigtail adorned with an unreal stiff white ribbon. For the first time he sees she is also wearing symmetrical white barrettes, shaped like butterflies. Judy looks up toward his face and fights crying at the vagueness she sees there. This coat is too hot, she complains. I'll carry it, he says. He folds its cloth weight over his arm, and she is like a butterfly herself now in her pink dress. Her green eyes have gone wide in this gray airport's bustling limbo, under reddish-brown eyebrows, one of which, near the flat bulge of her little freckled nose, has a little cowlick fanning the hairs the wrong way. Nelson has that cowlick, and inherited it from Harry, who used to lick his middle finger and try to slick it down in the high school boy's lavatory mirror. Amazing that a thing so tiny could pass on. Maybe the only immortality we get, a little genetic quirk going on and on like a computerized number in your monthly bank statement. Ghostly, empty shapes, people he doesn't know, push and stream past the two of them. They are an island surrounded by jokes and noisy news and embraces. People tanned that deep, bluish mahogany that comes only from months and months of Florida, embrace newcomers the color of wallpaper paste. Harry says, so Judy will hear her grandfather say something and not just stand there numbly, they must be over at the baggage. He looks up and sees above their heads the sign saying baggage, and takes her moist little hand and tugs her toward the crowd around the baggage belt, which is already moving. But neither Prue nor Janice nor Nelson nor Roy is there, as far as they can see. Face after face refuses to cohere into a known face. His eyes, always good, trouble him now in artificially lit places. The blue shoulder bag Prue let him carry for her is heavier than he would have thought. She must have packed bricks. His shoulder and eyes burn. I guess, he ventures, though it seems unlikely, they're already at the car. He taps his pocket for the lump of keys, doesn't feel it, begins to panic, then remembers how he tossed them to Janice. Of course. Confidently now he approaches the brown glass exit doors, but the wrong one pops its seal and slides open when his body trips the electric eye. The wrong one as far as he is concerned. Judy was pulling him in the right direction, where a slice of hot outdoor air swiftly widens. Sun has broken through the milky stratocirrus. It bounces off the waxy leaves of the nameless tropical plants flourishing near his knees. It winks blindingly from a mass of moving cars, a brutal river of them rushing along the access strip just beyond the curb. He holds Judy's hand tighter, in case she decides to jump off the curb. We're all full of crazy impulses. They cross to a lake of shimmering cars, the lot where he parked. Where exactly? He finds he's forgotten. He is utterly empty of the car's location. A Camry Deluxe wagon, pearl gray metallic, with the more potent 24-valve 2.5-liter V6 engine. He was still so sore at being tailgated by that red Camaro, and at Janice criticizing his driving, that he wasn't paying any attention to where they parked. He remembers the zebra crosswalk and the little landscaped mound of center strip where some sun-starved college kid had propped his knapsack and pillowed his head on it to soak up a few rays, and the fussy old guy who thought he was in charge, gesturing at you which way the exit and the booth where you pay was, putting too much into it like that husband at the airport gabbing at his wife, Grace, as if she had no sense, meeting that frizzy-haired, long-toothed, smiling Jewish princess, taller than either of them, but he doesn't remember which of these rows he parked the car in. He parked it in the patch of dead blank brain cells, like all of our brains will be when we're dead, unless the universe has cooked up some truly elaborate surprise. The National Enquirer, which Janice sometimes brings home from the Winn-Dixie, keeps reporting people's near-death experiences, but for Harry they're too close to the little green men in the UFOs. Even if they're true, it's not much comfort. Judy's hand has slipped out of his as he stands puzzling on the strip of Bermuda grass on the edge of the parking lot. Bermuda grows everywhere down here, watered by sprinklers, and doesn't feel like real grass to him, too matted and broad, kind of crunchy underfoot. His chest begins to hurt. A sly, broad pain, a kind of band under the skin, tightly sewn there. Judy's voice floats up to him like a thin lifeline. "What color is the car, Grandpa?" "Oh, you know," he says, keeping his sentences short, so as not to stir up his pain. "Pale gray, metallic finish, the same color as about half the cars in the world. Don't you panic, it'll come to me where I left it." The poor kid is losing it in her fight not to cry. "Daddy'll drive off," she blurts out. "Leaving you and me? Why would he do that?" "He won't do that, Judy." "He gets real mad sometimes for no real reason." "He probably has some reason he doesn't tell you." "How about you? You ever get mad?" "Not like Daddy. Mom says he should see a doctor." "I guess we all should now and then." Rabbit's sense of doom is trickling like cold water through his stomach. Doctors. His own doctor is bringing his son into the practice, so if he drops dead, the kid will take right over, won't miss a Medicare form. You fill a slot for a time and then move out. That's the decent thing to do. Make room. He scans the ranks of glinting metal in their slots for a strip of gray that will ring a bell, and wonders if he is misremembering the color. He has owned so many cars in his life and sold so many more. He announces, "I think I left it over on the left, in about the third row. What happened, Judy, was there was this old guy kind of directing things, waving which way everybody should go, and the bastard distracted me. Don't you hate bossy people like that who know everything better than you do?" "What happened, Judy, was there was this old guy kind of directing things, waving which way everybody should go, and the bastard distracted me. Don't you hate bossy people like that who know everything better than you do?" The little girl's glossy red head mutely nods at his side, too worried for words. Rabbit rattles on to chase their clouds away. "Whenever somebody tells me to do something, my instinct's always to do the opposite. It's got me into a lot of trouble, but I've had a lot of fun. This bossy old guy was pointing one direction, so I went the other and found a space." And for a second, in a kind of window between two tightenings of the band across his chest, he sees the space. Next to a cream-colored van, a Ford bivouac with those watery blue Minnesota plates, parked sloppily over the white line, another cause for irritation. He had to ease in carefully so as to leave Janice room enough to open her door on the right and not rub fenders with the maroon Galaxy on the left. And now he sees from far off in the shimmering Florida heat a strip of cream risen above the other metallic rooftops. Third row about a wedge shot in. He says in triumph, "Judy, I see it. Let's go," and takes her hand again, lest her small perfection be crushed by one of the automobiles cruising the rows looking for a spot. In some of these big white caddies and Olses, the tiny old driver can hardly see over the hood out the windshield, just clinging to the wheel, body all shrunk and bent by osteoporosis. It hasn't got him yet. He's still 6'3" as far as he knows, at least his pants don't drag on the floor. But he hears Janice talk about it. It's been on TV a fair amount, that commercial with the two women on the train. It affects women more than men, their smaller bones. She takes calcium pills along with all the other vitamin pills next to her orange juice at breakfast. God, is she healthy. She'll live forever just to spite him. He and little Judith arrive across the hazardous hot asphalt at the pearl-gray Camry, which is his, he knows, from Janice's tennis racket and press on the back seat, flung in there separately. The dumb mutt, what's the use of a press if you don't put the racket in it? But nobody is here, and the car is locked, and Harry threw away the keys. The little girl begins to cry. Luckily, he has a handkerchief in the hip pocket of his faded plaid golf pants. He lowers Prue's leaden blue bag to the asphalt and puts the little winter coat he has been carrying on top of the car roof as if to stake a claim, and kneels down and wipes the bits of melted skybar from Judy's lips and then the tears from her cheeks. He, too, wouldn't mind having a cry, squatting here next to the car's sunstruck metallic flank, his knees complaining on top of everything else, and the small girl's hot, panicked breath adding to the heat. In her distress, her freckled nose has begun to run, and her mouth taken on a hardness, a stiffness in the upper lip he associates with Nelson when the boy is frightened or angry. "We can either stay here and let the others find us," Harry explains to his granddaughter, "or we can go back and look for them. Maybe we're too tired and hot to do anything but stay here. We could play a game seeing how many different states' license plates we can find." This breaks her sniffling into a wet little laugh. "Then we'd get lost again." Her eyelids are reddened by the friction of tears, and tiny flakes of light shine in her green irises like the microscopic facets that give metallic paint its tinselly quality. "Look," he tells her, "here's Minnesota with its little clump of pine trees. 10,000 lakes, it says. Score one for Grandpa." Judy merely smiles this time, not granting him a laugh. She knows he's trying to get her to forgive his mistake in losing the others. "It's not us who are lost. We know where we are," he says. "It's them." He stops crouching beside her, the hoity-toity little snip, and stands up to uncreak his knees and also to ease the crowded feeling in his chest. He sees them, just this side of the zebra crossing, coming this way, struggling with suitcases. He first sees Nelson carrying Roy on his shoulders like a two-headed monster, and then Prue's head of red hair puffed out like the Sphinx, and Janice's white tennis dress. Harry, up to his chest in car roofs, waves his arm back and forth like a man on a desert island. Janice waves back, a quick toss of her hand as if he's far from what they're talking about. But when they're all reunited, Nelson is furious. His face is pale and his upper lip stiff and bristling. "Jesus Christ, Dad, where did you disappear to? We went all the way back upstairs to that stupid candy store when you didn't show up in the baggage area." "We were there, weren't we, Judy?" Harry says, marveling at his son's growing baldness, exposed mercilessly by the Florida sunlight beating down through the thinned strands, and at his mustache, a mouse-colored stray blur like those fuzzballs that collect under furniture. He has noticed these developments before in recent years, but they still have the power to astonish him, along with the crow's feet and bitter cheek lines time has etched in his child's face, sharp in the sunlight. "We didn't take more than a minute in the candy store and came right down the escalator to the baggage place," Rabbit says, pleased to be remembering so exactly visualizing the 2 candy bars, the extra nickel he had to fish up for the black counter-woman's upturned silver-polish-colored palm, the skin magazines with the girls' open mouths, the interleaved teeth of the escalator steps he was afraid Judy might catch her foot on. "We must have slipped by each other in the crowd," he adds, trying to be helpful and innocuous. His son frightens him. Janice unlocks the Camry. The baking heat of its interior, released like a ghost, brushes past their faces. They put the suitcases in the way back. Prue lifts the groggy boy off Nelson's shoulders and arranges him in the shadows of the back seat. Roy's thumb is stuck in his mouth, and his dark eyes open for an unseeing second. Nelson, his hands at last freed, slaps the top of the Camry and cries in his agony of irritation, "God damn it, Dad, we've been frantic because of you. We thought you might have lost her." There is a look Nelson gets when he's angry or frightened that Harry has always thought of as white around the gills, a tension draining color from the child's face and pulling his eyes back into his head. He gets the look from his mother, and Janice got it from hers, dark, plump old Bessie, who was a hot-tempered kerner, she liked to tell them. "We stuck right together," Rabbit says calmly. "And don't dent my fucking car. You've damaged enough cars in your life." "Yeah, and you've damaged enough lives in yours. Now you're kidnapping my goddamn daughter." "I can't believe this," Harry begins. A cold arrow of pain suddenly heads down his left arm through the armpit. He blinks. My own granddaughter is all he can organize himself to say. Janice, looking at his face, asks, "What's the matter, Harry?" "Nothing," he tells her sharply. "Just this crazy kid. Something's bugging him, and I can't believe it's me." A curious gaseous weight enveloping his head and chest has descended in the wake of the sudden arrow. He slumps down behind the wheel, feeling faintly disoriented but determined to drive. When you're retired, you get into your routines, and other people, even so-called loved ones, become a strain. This entire other family loads itself into place behind him. Prue swings her nice wide ass in her three-dimensional checked suit into the back seat next to sleeping Roy, and Nelson climbs in on the other side right behind Harry so he can feel the kid's breath on the back of his neck. He turns his head as far as he can and says to Nelson, in the corner of his eye, "I resent the word kidnap." "Resent it, then. That's what it felt like. Suddenly we looked around and you weren't there." Like Pan Am 103 on the radar screen. "We knew where we were, didn't we, Judy?" Harry calls backward. The girl has slithered over her parents and brother into the way back with the luggage. Harry can see the silhouette of her head with its pigtail and angular ribbon in the rearview mirror. "I didn't know where I was, but I knew you did," she answers loyally, casting forward the thin thread of her voice. Nelson tries to apologize. "I didn't mean to get so pissed," he says, "but if you knew what a hassle it is to have 2 children, the hassle of traveling all day, and then to have your own father steal one of them—" "I didn't steal her, for Christ's sake," Harry says. "I bought her a Sky Bar." He can feel his heart racing, a kind of gallop with an extra kick in one of the legs. He starts up the Camry and puts it in drive, and then brakes when the car jerks forward and puts it into reverse, trying not to make contact, as he eases out, with the side of the Minnesota bivouac, its protruding side mirror and its racing stripe in 3 tones of brown. "Harry, would you like me to drive?" Janice asks. "No," he says. "Why would I?" She hesitates. Without looking, he can see, in the hesitation, her little pointed tongue poke out of her mouth and touch her upper lip in that way she has when she tries to think. He knows her so well. He knows her so well that making conversation with her is like having a struggle with himself. "You just had a look on your face a minute ago," she says. "You looked—" "White around the gills," he supplies. "Something like that." The old guy who thinks he's directing the show directs them down the arrows painted on the asphalt toward the toll booth. The car ahead of theirs in line, a tan Honda Accord with New Jersey plates, Garden State, has backs of the head in it that look familiar. It's that jumpy little guy who hopped through the chairs back in the waiting room, good old Grace up beside him, and in the back seat the frizzy-headed daughter and another passenger, a head even taller and the frizz even tighter, the black guy in the waspy business suit Harry had assumed had nothing to do with him. The old guy is gabbing and gesturing, and the black guy is nodding just like Harry used to do with Fred Springer. It's bad enough even when your father-in-law is the same color. Harry is so interested he nearly coasts into the back of the Honda. "Honey, brake," Janice says, and out of the blur of her white tennis dress in the corner of his eye she holds out to him 50 cents for the parking lot charge. An Oriental kid, stone deaf inside his Walkman earmuffs, takes the 2 quarters with a hand jumping along with some beat only he can hear, and the striped bar goes up and they are free to go home. "Well," Harry says, back on the weird, brief highway, "it's a hell of a thing to have your own son accuse you of kidnapping. And as to the big deal of having 2 children, it can't be that much worse than having 1. Either way, your freedom's gone." Actually, Nelson has, unwittingly or not, touched a sore point, for Harry and Janice did have 2 children. Their dead child lives on with them as a silent glue of guilt and shame, an inexpungible sourness at the bottom of things. And Rabbit suspects himself of having an illegitimate daughter, 3 years younger than Nelson, by a woman called Ruth, who wouldn't admit it the last time Harry saw her. Nelson goes on, helpless in the grip of his hardened resentments. "You go run off with Judy all palsy-walsy and haven't said boo to little Roy." "Say boo? I'd wake him up saying boo. He's been asleep all the time. It's like he's drugged." "And how much longer you going to let him suck his thumb? Shouldn't he be outgrowing it by now?" "What does it matter to you if he sucks his thumb? How is it hurting you?" He'll get buck teeth. Dad, that's an old wives' tale. Prue asked our pediatrician, and he said you don't suck your thumb with your teeth. Prue says quietly, he did say he should outgrow it soon. What makes you so down on everything, Dad? Nelson whines, unable, it seems, to find another pitch. The kid is itching, and his voice can't stop scratching. You used to be a pretty laid-back hombre. Now everything you say is kind of negative. Rabbit wants to lead the boy on, to see how bad he can make him look in front of the women. Rigid, he smilingly agrees. The older you get, the more you get set in your ways. Nobody at Valhalla Village sucks their thumb. There may even be a rule against it, like swimming in the pool without a bathing cap, like swimming with an earring on. Tell me something. What's the significance of an earring when you're married with 2 children? Nelson ignores the question in silence, making his father look bad. They are breezing along between shoulders of Bermuda grass, the palms clicking by like telephone poles. Prue says from the back seat, to change the subject, I can never get over how flat Florida is. It gets a little rolling, Harry tells her, away from the coasts, ranch and orange grove country, rednecks and a lot of Mexicans. We could all go for a drive inland someday, see the real Florida. Judy and Roy are dying to see Disney World, Nelson says, trying to become reasonable. Too far, his father swiftly tells him. It'd be like driving to Pittsburgh from Brewer. This is a big state. You need reservations to stay overnight, and this time of year there aren't any. Absolutely impossible. This flat statement renders them all wordless. Through the rushing noise of the air-conditioning fan and the humming of the tires, Harry hears from the way back that for a second time in this first half-hour he has made his granddaughter cry. Prue turns and murmurs to her. Harry shouts back, There's lots else to do. We can go to that circus museum in Sarasota again. I hate the circus museum, he hears Judy's small voice say. We've never been to the Edison house in Fort Myers, he announces, speaking now as patriarch to the entire carful. The people at the condo say it's fascinating. He even invented television, it turns out. And the beach, baby, Prue softly adds. You know how you love the beach at the shore. In a less maternal voice she tells Janice and Harry, She's a lovely swimmer now. Driving to the Jersey shore used to be absolutely the most boring thing we did, Nelson tells his parents, trying to get down out of his dark cloud into a family mode, willing now to reminisce and be a child again. Driving is boring, Rabbit pontificates, but it's what we do. Most of American life is driving somewhere and then driving back wondering why the hell you went. Harry, Janice says, you're going too fast again. Do you want to take 75 or push on to Route 41? Of all the roads Harry has seen in his life, Route 41, the old Tamiami Trail, is the most steadily depressing. It is wider than commercial use unlimited access highways tend to be up north, and somehow the competitive roadside enterprise looks worse in constant sunlight, as if, like plastic garbage bags, it will never rot away. Winn-Dixie, Publix, Eckerd Drugs, Kmart, Walmart, Taco Bell, Arc Plaza, Joy Food Store, Starvin' Marvin Discount Food, Wine, and Beer. Among the repeating franchises selling gasoline and groceries and liquor and drugs all mixed together in that peculiar lawless way they have down here, low, pale buildings cater especially to illness and age. Arthritic Rehabilitation Center, Nurse Finder Incorporated, Cardiac Rehabilitation Center, Chiropractics, legal offices, Medicare and malpractice cases a specialty, hearing aids and contact lenses, West Coast Knee Center, Universal Prosthetics, National Cremation Society. On the telephone wires, instead of the sparrows and starlings you see in Pennsylvania, lone hawks and buzzards sit. Banks, stylish big structures in smoked glass, rise higher than the wires with their glossy self-advertisements. First Federal, Southeast, Barnett Bank with its super teller, C&S proclaiming all services, servicing the millions and billions in money people bring down here along with their decrepit bodies, the loot of all those lifetimes flooding the sandy low land, floating these big smoked glass superliners. Alongside 41, between the banks and stores and pet suppliers and sprinkler installers, miles of low homes are roofed with fat white cooling tile. A block or two back from the highway in the carbon monoxide haze, tall pink condos like Spanish castles or Chinese pagodas spread sideways like banyan trees. Banyan trees fascinate Harry down here, the way they spread by dropping down vines that take root. They look to him like enormous chewing gum on your shoe. Easy Drugs, New View, A Merry Life and Health, Starlight Motel, Jesus Christ is Lord. His car full of family grows silent and dazed as he drives the miles, stopping now and then at the overhead lights that signal an intersecting road. A secondary road heading west to beaches and what mangrove swamps are left, and east to the scruffy prairie being skinned in great square tracts for yet more development. Development. We're being developed to death. Each turning off of Route 41 takes some people home, to their little niche in the maze, their own parking spot and hard-bought place in the sun. The sun is low enough over the Gulf now to tinge everything pink, the red of the stoplights almost invisible. At the Angstroms' own turn-off, 2 more miles of streets unfold, some straight and some curving, through blocks of single-family houses with half-dead little front yards ornamented by plumes of pampas grass and flowering bushes on vacation from flowering in this dry butt-end of the year. Janice and Harry at first thought they might purchase one of these pale one-story houses lurking behind their tropical bushes and orange trees, caves of coolness and dark, with their secret pools out back behind the garages with their automatic doors. But such houses reminded them unhappily of the house they had in Penn Villas that saw so much marital misery and strangeness before it burned down, half of it. So they settled for a 2-bedroom condominium up high in the air on the 4th floor, overlooking a golf course from a narrow balcony screened by the top branches of Norfolk pines. Of all the addresses where Harry has lived in his life, 303 Jackson Road, Battery A, 66th F.A. Battalion, Fort Hood, Texas, 447 Wilbur Street, apartment number 5, whatever the number on Summer Street was where he parked himself with Ruth Leonard that spring long ago, 26 Vista Crescent, 89 Joseph Street for 15 years, courtesy of Ma Springer, 14.5 Franklin Drive. This is the highest number by far, 59,600 Pindo Palm Boulevard, Building B, number 413. He hadn't been crazy about the 13. In fact, he thought builders didn't put that number in things. But maybe people are less superstitious than they used to be. When he was a kid, there was all sorts of worry, not altogether playful, about black cats and spilled salt and opening umbrellas in the house and kicking buckets and walking under ladders. The air was thought then to have eyes and ears and to need placating. Valhalla Village, a big grouted sign, the 2 words curved around a gold ring of actual brass, inlaid and epoxied over to discourage vandalous thieves. You turn in at the security booth, get recognized by the guard there, park in one of 2 spaces with your condo number stenciled right on the asphalt. Use your key on the outer door of Building B, punch out the code number to open the inner door, take the elevator, and walk to your left. The corridor is floored in peach-colored carpet and smells of air freshener, to mask the mildew that creeps into every closed space in Florida. A crew comes through 3 times a week vacuuming, and the rug gets lathered and the walls worked once a month. And there are plastic bouquets in little things like basketball hoops next to every numbered door, and a mirror across from the elevator, plus a big runny-colored green and golden vase on a table shaped like a marble half-moon. But it is still not a space in which you want to linger. With their suitcases bumping the walls of silver and peach, and Janice and Prue still gamely gabbing, and little Roy being made to walk on his own 2 feet now that he's awake for once, and crying about it at every step, Harry feels they are disturbing a mortuary calm, though in fact most everybody behind these doors has contrived something to do in the afternoon, golf or tennis, or a beauty parlor appointment, or a bus trip to the Everglades. You live life here as if your condo is just home base, a sort of air-conditioned anteroom to the sunny mansion of all outdoors. Stay inside, you might start to mildew. Around 5:30, an eerie silence of many simultaneous naps descends, but at 4 o'clock it's too early for that. The door to 413 has a double lock operated with 2 keys, one of which also opens the outer door downstairs. With the impatient mass of his entire family and its baggage pressing behind him, Harry fumbles a bit, his hand jumping the way it does when he's feeling crowded in the chest, his notched key scratching at the wiggly small slot. But then it fits and turns and clicks, and the door swings open, and he is home. This place could belong to one of millions of part-time Floridians, but in fact is his and Janice's. You enter in a kind of foyer, a closet door to the left, and on the right, see-through shelves of stained wood, Janice has loaded with birds and flowers she made out of shells in a class she took that first year down here when she was still enthusiastic about shells. Enthusiasm about shells doesn't last, nor does taking Spanish lessons so you can talk to the help. It's a phase the greenhorns, the fresh snowbirds, must go through. Baby scallops make feathers and petals, augurs do as bird beaks, slipper shells are like little boats. The shelves, which also hold a few of Ma Springer's knickknacks, including a big green glass egg with a bubble inside it, separate the foyer from the kitchen, with the dining room beyond it. Straight ahead lies the living room area, where they have the TV and the comfortable wicker chairs, and a low, round glass table they often eat dinner from, if a show they care about is on. To the left, a square-armed blonde sofa can be folded out for a bed, and a hollow door leads to the master bedroom, which has a bathroom and a storage area where Janice keeps an ironing board she never uses, and an exercise bicycle she rides when she thinks she's getting overweight, to Nelson's old tapes of the Bee Gees that he outgrew long ago. The guest bedroom is entered off the living room to the right, and has its own bathroom that backs up to the kitchen plumbing. The arrangement other years has been that Nelson and Prue take this room with a cot for the baby, and Judith sleeps on the fold-out sofa. But Harry is not sure this arrangement is still proper. The little ones have grown. Roy, perhaps, is too big and observant to share a bedroom with his parents, and the girl is getting to be enough of a lady to deserve a little privacy. He explains his plan. This year I thought we might put the cot in the storage room for Judy. She can use our bathroom and then shut the door and give Roy the living room sofa. The small boy gazes upward at his grandfather while his thumb sneaks toward his mouth. He has a flubby sort of mouth that Rabbit associates with the Lubbles. Neither the Yangstroms nor the Springers have bunched up fat lips like that, like a row of plump berries run together. But Teresa's father, in the one time Harry met him, visiting Akron because he went to Cleveland for a dealer conference anyway, did, if you could see around the 2 days' beard and the cigarette always in the guy's fat mouth. It's as if Prue's worthless creep of a father has been disguised as a child and sent to spy on them all. The kid takes in everything and says nothing. Harry speaks down to him roughly. "Yeah, what's the matter with that?" The thumb roots in deeper, and the child's eyes, darker even than Nelson's and Janice's, shine with distrust. Judy offers to explain. "He's scared to be alone in this room all by himself, the baby." Prue tries to help. "Sweetie, Mommy and Daddy would be right in that other room where you used to sleep before you became so grown up." Nelson says, "You might have discussed it first with us, Dad, before you switched everything around." "Discuss it? When is there a chance to discuss anything with you? Every time I call the lot you're not there, or the line is busy. I used to get Jake or Rudy at least. Now all I get is some fruity-voiced pal of yours you've hired." "Yeah, Lyle tells me how you grill him about everything." "I don't grill him. I'm just trying to act interested. I still have an interest up there, even if you do think you're running it half the year." "Half the year? All the year from what Mom says." Janice intervenes. "What Mom says is her legs hurt after all that sitting in the car, and she's thinking of moving the cocktail hour ahead if this is how we're all going to talk for 5 days. Nelson, your father was trying to be considerate about the sleeping arrangements. He and I discussed it. Judy, which would you rather, the sofa or the ironing room?" "I didn't mind the old way," she says. Little Roy is trying to follow the drift of this discussion and removes his thumb enough for his flubby lips to mouth something Rabbit does not understand. Whatever he's saying, it makes Roy's eyes water to think of it. "Eee" is all Harry hears at the end of the sentence. Prue translates. "He says she gets to watch TV." "What a disgusting baby tattletale," says Judy, and quick as a dragonfly darting over water, she skims across the carpet and with an open hand whacks her little brother on the side of his spherical head. Prue cuts his hair in a kind of inverted bowl shape. As when a faucet gasps emptily for a second after being turned on, his outrage silences him a moment, though his mouth is open. His yell, when it comes, arrives at full volume. Against its sonic background, Judy explains to them all with a certain condescending air, "Just Johnny Carson sometimes when everybody else was asleep, and Saturday Night Live once that I can remember." Harry asks her, "So you'd rather stay in here with the lousy TV than have a little cozy room of your own?" "It doesn't have any windows," she points out shyly, not wanting to hurt his feelings. "Fine, fine," Harry says. "I don't give a fuck where anybody sleeps," and in demonstration of his indifference strides into his own bedroom, past the king-size bed they bought down here, with its padded headboard covered in quilted satin and a matching jade-green coverlet that is as hard to fold up as the ones in hotels, into the little windowless room, and picks up the folding cot, with its sheets and baby-blue Orlan blanket on it, and lugs it through the doorways, banging the frames and one of the wicker armchairs in the living room into the guest bedroom. He is embarrassed. He overestimated how fast Judy was growing. He had wanted to embower her as his princess. He doesn't know little girls. His one daughter died, and his other is not his. Janice says, "Harry, you mustn't overexert yourself," the doctor said. "The doctor said," he mocks. "All he ever sees is people over 75, and he says to me just what he says to them." But he is breathing hard, and Prue hastens after him to spare him the effort of straightening the folding leg, a U-shape of metal tubing that has come unclicked and folded underneath, and pulls taut the sheets and blanket. Back in the living room, Harry says to Nelson, who is holding little Roy in his arms again, "Now are you and the brat happy?" For answer, Nelson turns to Janice and says, "Jesus, Mom, I don't know if I can stand 5 days of this." But then, when they all get settled, the suitcases unpacked into bureaus, Judy and Roy fed milk and cookies, and changed into bathing suits, and taken to the heated Valhalla Village pool by their mother and Janice, who has to sign them in, Harry and Nelson sit each with a beer at the round glass table and try to be friends. "So," Harry says, "how's the car business?" "You know as well as I do," Nelson says. "You see the stat sheets every month." He has developed a nervous, irritable habit of grimacing and hunching his shoulders, as though somebody behind him might be about to knock him on the head. He smokes a cigarette as if he's feeding himself something through a tube, constantly fiddling with the shape of the ash on the edge of a white clamshell he has borrowed from Janice's collection. "How do you like the '89s, Harry asks, determined not to put it off, now that he and the boy are alone. "I haven't seen the actual cars yet, just the brochures." "Beautiful brochures." "How many millions you think those ad agencies get for making up those brochures?" "I was looking at the Corolla one, trying to figure out if they really had driven that sedan and that wagon up into the mountains, or were just faking it, and I had to laugh. The cars were posed on snow, but there were no tracks showing how they got there. Look at it sometime." Nelson is not much amused. He shapes his ash into a perfect cone, and then suddenly stabs it out, twisting the butt vehemently. His hands shake more than a young man should. He sips his beer, leaving shreds of foam on his tufty mustache, and looking level at his father, says, "You asked me what I thought of the '89s. The same thing I thought about the '88s. Dull, Dad. Boxy. They're still giving us cars that look like gas misers when there's been a gas glut for 10 years. Americans want to go back to fins and convertibles and the limo look, and these Japs are still trying to sell these tidy little boxes. And not cheap, either. That's what hurts. The lousy dollar against the yen. Why should people pay 17 grand for a GTS when in the same range you can get a Mustang or Beretta GT or Mazda MX-6? A Celica doesn't cost 17 grand, Harry says. Mine back home listed at less than 15. Get a few options and it does. Don't push the options at people. You get a name in the county for loading. People come in determined to have a stripped model. You should sell 'em one without making 'em feel they're being cheapskates. Tell it to California, Nelson says. Practically all they want to part with are loaded models. The automatic notchbacks, the all-track turbos. You want a basic ST or GT, it takes months for the order to come through. Luxury is where the bigger profit is, all the way up the line back to Tokyo. You have to try to sell what they send us. The one machine they make that's really moving, the Camry, you can't wheedle enough out of the bastards. They treat us like dirt, Dad. They see us as soft, lazy Americans over the hill. 10 more years they'll have bought the whole country. Some television show I was watching, they already own all of Hawaii and half of L.A. and Nevada. They're buying up thousands of acres of desert in Nevada. What are they going to do with it, set off Japanese atom bombs? Don't get down on the Japanese like that, Nelson. We've done fine riding along with the Japanese. Riding along, you said it. Like riding along in the back seat of a Tercel. You always talk of them with such awe, like they're supermen. They're not. Some of their design, you get away from the little, safe, dependable, cheapy family car, is a disaster. The Land Cruiser is a dog. It doesn't begin to compete with the Cherokee, and neither does the 4Runner. It was so underpowered they had to come with a V6 engine that turns out to be a guzzler. 14 miles to the gallon, I was reading in Consumer Reports. And that van, it's ridiculous. Where the engine is, up between the front seats, the only way to get to the front from the back is get all the way out and climb back in. In winter in Pennsylvania, people don't like to do that. So many customers have been complaining. I drove one myself the other day just to see, and even though I'm no giant, boy, did I feel squeezed in. No footroom to speak of and no place to put your elbow. And zilch acceleration. Pull into a fast-moving highway, you'll get rear-ended. The wind pushed me all over 422. The damn thing is so tall, I could hardly step up into it. That's right, Harry is thinking. You're no giant. Nelson seems to him strangely precise and indignant and agitated, like a nicely made watch with one tooth off a cogwheel or a gummy spot in the lubrication. The kid keeps sniffing and lights another cigarette, after not enjoying the one he just snuffed out. He keeps touching his nose as if his mustache hurts. Well, Harry says, taking a relaxed tone to try to relax his son, vans were never the bread and butter, and Toyota knows they have a lemon. They're getting a total revamp out by 91. How do you like the new Cressida? It stinks, in my humble. There's nothing new about it. Oh, it's bigger a bit, and the engine is up from 2.8 to 3.0 and 24 valves instead of 12, so you get more oomph. But for a basic 21K, you expect a little oomph. My God! The dashboard is a disaster. The climate control panel slides out like a drawer and won't budge unless the ignition's on, which is ridiculous, number one. And two, they kept from last year's model their crazy idea of 2 sets of audio controls, so you have all these extra buttons when already there's enough for an airplane cockpit. It costs luxury, Dad, and it drives luxury, you could say, but it looks cheap inside and pseudo-Audi outside. Toyota, let's face it, has about the styling imagination of a gerbil. Their cars don't express anything. Good cars, classic cars, the 30s Packards, the little Jags with the long hood and spoked wheels, the 50s finned jobbies, even the VW Bug expressed something, made a statement. Toyotas don't express anything but playing it safe and stealing other people's ideas. Look at their pickup. The pickup used to be hot, but now they've let Ford and GM right back into the market. Look at the MR2, it doesn't sell for shit now. Harry argues, high insurance is hurting everybody's two-seaters. Toyota puts out a good, solid machine. They handle well and they last, and people know that and respect it. Nelson cuts him short. And they're so damn dictatorial. They tell you exactly what to charge, what to put in the windows, what your salespeople should wear, how many square feet of this and that you have to be good enough to lick their bazoo. When I took over, I was surprised at all the crap you and Charlie had been swallowing all those years. They expect you to be their robot. Now Rabbit is fully offended. Welcome to the real world, kid. You're going to be part of some organization or other in this life. Toyota's been good to us and good to your grandfather, and don't you forget it. I can remember Fred Springer, when he first got the Toyota franchise, saying he felt like a kid at Christmas all year round. The women in the family are always saying Nelson is a throwback to his grandfather, and Harry hopes by mentioning dead Fred to bring the boy back into line. All this blaspheming Toyota makes Harry uneasy. But Nelson goes on. Grandpa was a dealer, Dad. He loved to make deals. He used to tell about it. You came up short on some and made out like a bandit on others, and it was fun. There was some play in the situation, some space for creativity. Unloading the trade-ins is about the only spontaneous creative thing left in the business now. And they tell you they don't want a bunch of ugly American junk up front on the lot. You almost have to sell the used cars on the sly. At least you can cut an extra $1,000 or so if you get a dummy. Selling new is just running the cash register. I don't call that selling, just standing at the checkout counter. Not bad for 45 thou plus benefits. What Nelson makes a year now. Harry and Janice quarrel about it. He says it's too much. She says he has a family to support. When I was your age, he tells the boy, perhaps not for the first time, I was pulling down $13,500 a year as a linotyper and came home dirty every night. The job gave me headaches and ruined my eyes. I used to have perfect eyes. That was then, Dad. This is now. You were still in the industrial era. You were a blue-collar slave. People don't make money an hour at a time anymore. You just get yourself in the right position, and it comes. I know guys, lawyers, guys in real estate, no older than me and not as smart, who pull in $200,000-300K on a single transaction. You must know a lot of retired money down here. It's easy to be rich. That's what this country is all about. These must be the guys doing all that selling off of Nevada to the Japanese you're so upset about. What are you so hungry for money for anyway? You live mortgage-free in that house your mother gives you. You must be saving a bundle. Speaking of used cars, Dad, I hate to break the news to you, but $40,000 just isn't a fuck of a lot if you want to live with any style. Jesus, how much style do you and Prue need? Your house is free. All you do is cover heat and taxes. The taxes on that barn have crept up to over $4,000. Mount Judge real estate is way up since the new baby boom. Even a semi-detached over toward that slummy end of Jackson Road where you used to live goes for 6 figures. Also, the federal tax reform didn't do a thing for my bracket. You got to be rich to get the benefits. Lyle was showing me on a spreadsheet. That's something else I wanted to ask you about. Whose idea was it to replace Mildred Croust with this guy? Dad, she'd been with Springer Motors forever. I know, that was the point. She could do it all in her sleep. She couldn't actually, though she was asleep a lot of the time. She never could handle computers, for one thing. Oh, sure, she tried, but one little scramble or error message would show up on the screen. She'd blame the machine and call up the company to send a repairman over at $120 an hour when all that was wrong was she couldn't read the manual and had hit the wrong key. She was ancient. You should have let her go when she reached retirement age. The apartment door furtively clicks open. Just me, Janice's voice calls. Prue and the babies wanted to stay at the pool a little longer, and I thought I'd come back and start dinner. I thought we'd just have odds and ends tonight. I'll see if there's any soup to warm up. Keep talking, boys. She doesn't intrude upon them. Her footsteps head into the kitchen. She must imagine they are having a healing talk, father to son. In fact, Harry is looking at Nelson as if the boy is a computer. There is a glitch, a secret. He talks too much, too rapidly. Nellie used to be taciturn and sullen, and now he keeps spilling out words, giving more answer than there was question. Something is revving him up, something wrong. Harry says of Mildred Croust, "She wasn't that old actually, was she? 68, 69? Dad, she was in her 70s and counting. Lyle does all she ever used to do and comes in only 2 or 3 days a week. He's doing something different, I can see on the stat sheets. That was the thing I wanted to ask you about, the figures on the used in the November set. For some reason, the kid has gone white around the gills again. He pokes his cigarette through the hole at the beer pull tab and then crushes the can in one hand. No big trick now that they're made of paper-thin aluminum. He rises from his chair and seems to be heading toward his mother, who has been knocking things around in the kitchen. "Janice," Harry shouts, turning his head with difficulty, his neck stiff with fat. She stands in the kitchen entryway in a wet black bathing suit and a purple wraparound skirt, to make herself decent for the elevator. She looks a touch foozled. She cracked open the Campari bottle before leading the others down to the pool and must have hurried back to give herself another slug. Her skimpy hair is wet and stringy. "What?" she says, responding guiltily to the urgent sound of Harry's voice. "Where did that latest batch of sheets from the lot go? Weren't they sitting over on the desk?" This desk is something they bought cheap down here in a hurry to furnish their place, in the same style as the end tables flanking the blonde fold-out sofa and their bedroom bureaus, white painted wood with the legs slashed at intervals with gold paint to imitate bamboo joints. It has only 3 shallow drawers that stick in the humidity and some cubby holes up top where bills and invitations get lost. The desktop of some glazed marmoreal stuff like petrified honey vanilla ice cream is generally covered by a drift of unanswered letters and bank statements, and statements from their stockbrokers and money management fund and golf scorecards, and Xeroxed announcements from the Village Activities Committee, called VAC, since life down here is supposedly a perpetual vacation. Also, Janice has a way of tearing out clippings from health magazines and the National Enquirer and the Fort Myers News Press, and then forgetting who she meant to send them to. She looks frightened. "Were they?" she asks. "Maybe I threw them out. Your idea, Harry, is just pile everything on it and it'll still be there next year when you want it. These just came in last week. They were November's financial summaries." Her mouth pinches in, and her face seems to click shut on a decision she will stick to blindly no matter what happens, the way women will. "I don't know where they went to. What I especially hate are your old golf cards drifting around. Why do you keep them?" "I write tips to myself on them, what I learned on that round. Don't change the subject, Janice. I want those goddamn stat sheets." Nelson stands beside his mother at the mouth of the kitchen, the crushed can in his hand. Without the denim jacket, his shirt looks even more sissified, with its delicate pink stripes and white French cuffs and round-pointed white collar. The boy and Janice are near the same height, with tense, small, cloudy faces. Both look furtive. "No big deal, Dad," Nelson says in a dry-mouthed voice. "You'll be getting the December summaries in a couple of weeks." When he turns toward the refrigerator to get himself another beer, he gives Rabbit a heartbreaking view of the back of his head. The careful rat's tail, the curved sliver of earring, the growing bald spot. And when Prue comes back from the pool with the children, all of them in rubber flip-flops and hugging towels around their shoulders and their hair pasted flat against their skulls, the two small children shivering gleefully, their lips bluish, their miniature fingers white and wrinkled from the water, Harry sees Prue in a new way as the weakest link in a conspiracy against him. That cushiony frontal kiss she gave him at the airport, that pelvis that in her high-cut but otherwise demure white bathing suit looks so gently pride-whiter by the passing years. Their fifth winter down here, this is, and Harry still wakes, amazed to find himself actually in Florida beside the Gulf of Mexico. If not exactly beside it, within sight of it. At least he was until that new row of 6-story condos with ornamental turrets and Spanish tile roofs shut out the last distant wink of watery horizon. When he and Janice bought the place in 1984, you could still see from their balcony snatches of the Gulf, a dead-level edge to the world over the rooftops and broken between the raw new towers like the dots and dashes of Morse code. And in their excitement they bought a telescope and tripod at a nautical shop at the mall a mile down Pinto Palm Boulevard.